intention is to bring understanding, openness, and curiosity, not sensationalism. Listener discretion is advised.
Today, I'm going to tell you a little ghost story. Oh, okay. We're going to talk about the White Witch of Rose Hall.
Okay, a sentence I have not heard yet.
Perfect. So, this ghost story is allegedly about a murderous Haitian-taught woman living in Jamaica who took on slaves as lovers and killed them. And now she's a very popular ghost story, very popular tourist attraction.
Okay.
And as you can already hear in that first sentence, a couple problematic things arising. But when I started my notes for this, it did not go in the direction that I anticipated my notes going in.
Oh, okay.
So let's jump into it.
Great.
Rose Hall Great House is one of the most famous haunted locations in the Caribbean. Much of the lore centers on the legend of the White Witch of Rose Hall, whose real name would be Annie Palmer. Her story blends plantation history, folklore, and later tourism storytelling. And let's just get into what the claims are in terms of that tourism ghost industry.
Okay.
Okay. So I actually saw this on an episode of Ghost Brothers. And
okay.
I was really curious about the legend. And so my plan was to cover Annie because she's this perfect example of what we talk about on alter ego as it relates to faith or spiritual practice converging with crime and kind of this opposite personality that maybe is kind of hidden. I was like, oh, this would be a really good topic. But like I said, these notes did not go as I expected. So her story is that she married John Palmer, who was the plantation owner, but that she was actually a really dangerous and violent woman who took enslaved men as lovers and would kill them either because she got bored of them or just needed to kind of protect that was her hobby. And unsurprisingly, if you're following this narrative, she also eventually murdered her husband, John.
Okay.
But she wasn't just a female killer, she was a voodoo practitioner.
Okay, I'm already having mixed emotions.
Yes.
Continue,
No. What's coming up for you, Jerry?
Can a girl not have hobbies?
I think probably not as it involves the slave trade. No, she should probably limit them. But in terms of just,
but is it all men?
It's all men.
Well, I mean, we like to cuss.
Can a bitch. So some stories claimed. I was like, I know that you're going to say that you love that she murdered her husband, but we can't. We have to keep the context. Oh my god.
Black Widow.
No, this is a problem.
She was like, Jerry, you are not gonna fucking get us canceled. Hell or high water, I'm not gonna let it happen.
I'm like, I probably should have been a little bit more clear that she tortured these enslaved men. It was really brutal and terrible. You're gonna edit this episode.
Am I gonna edit this?
Elite.
All right.
So
okay, continue, please.
But of course, it would be completely fair to be thinking, I'm confused. This is most likely an English woman living in the Caribbean she's white, hence the White Witch thing. Should I just start over? I feel like I should start over. I feel like this is the Patreon. The White Witch of Rose.
Okay, here's the thing.
The Caucasian witch.
Here's the thing. I need you to understand. I thought you meant white magic. Not white. Okay, everything. Forget.
Just clicked into place. I can start over.
Please continue. This is important context. Okay.
Oh my god.
I think that is very important that we clarify. This is a white woman.
Oh, a white woman.
In the Caribbean enslaving people of color.
Yes, because remember, her husband is the plantation owner.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm grounded in reality.
We're back. Listener, Jerry did think that we were all on some sort of level playing field, and we were not. So some stories claimed that she learned the practice in Haiti, where she actually grew up, by enslaved children. But as misunderstandings of voodoo tend to go, this did sort of automatically put her in light of violence and dark magic above anything else. So with the power, the violence, the murder, eventually one of her lovers, one of the slaves, and I mean, we're using lovers very generously here with this law, like, let's be clear that it's abuse. But he decided, okay, it's kill or be killed. And so he murdered her in revenge. Oh. And so of course now we have, because she had already killed her husband, so now she's just running this plantation. She's and abusing these slaves, and so this was sort of the way of like, we have to get out from under her control.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Now
that's a story, right? That's a tale.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense. I'm here. I get it.
And also, I mean, that's a pretty epic origin of this home, which is, you could still tour today. It's unbelievably beautiful. And of course it's a good story. And so people claim to see a female apparition on the balcony or passing by the windows. In her bedroom, they feel cold spots, and guests report feeling watched or like they're not alone. And like I said, this is the tourism industry. This is the ghost industry. So the house is very public about the hauntings. Like if you go on their website, it's very much like, yeah, we got ghosts here. And there's even a part of the tour where they highlight Annie's room and they call it the screaming bedroom, which again, sensationalism, we got it.
Yeah.
So sudden drops in temperature, disembodied whispers or screaming. Guests feel pressure on their chests, difficulty breathing. Some visitors even claim that it looks like someone's laying in the bed when no one's there. Staff and visitors claim to hear footsteps, doors opening and closing, furniture moving when no one's near it. Night guards have reported hearing what sounds like high heels walking across the upstairs hallway when the house is empty. So we're hitting all the classics, right? And then many visitors say that they've captured unexplained figures in photographs taken inside the house. I feel like with any good ghost story, there's always a woman in white. And so this house has a woman in white appearing on the staircase. There's a shadow figure standing near Annie Palmer's portrait, faces appearing in windows that were empty. And some tour guides keep a collection of ghost photos from guests. I think any place can be haunted. Let the record show I'm a big believer in ghosts and the supernatural. So I'm doing a lot of, if you're watching this, a lot of air quotes, but we're going to get into some of my apprehension here. But even though people claim to actually see who seems to be Annie herself looking over the plantation grounds, she vanishes when approached. And because the house sits on a hill, I mean, it's really just incredible. Some claim that her ghost still watches over the former plantation lands. Because this is a plantation, there are slave quarters, and those, of course, are very haunted too. Legend says that the surrounding grounds are haunted by enslaved people who suffered under her directly. They hear crying at night, chanting at night. They see shadow figures moving through the fields, and just like a general sense of heaviness, really heavy energy around the property. And this is not unusual, right? If you've been to any sort of haunted plantation, thinking like Myrtle's plantation in Louisiana, this is typical, right? This aspect of the legend is usually framed as like the spirits of the enslaved seeking justice or crying out. And again, like I said already, the haunting stories have become a major part of Jamaica's tourism culture, especially during nighttime tours of the estate. So this whole story, this complex history, this really problematic woman is pretty useful to Jamaica. But there's a little problem with the entire thing. Do you want to take a guess at what it might be?
I don't know. Give me like a tiny little hint.
I don't know that I can give you a hint. It seems that Annie Palmer never existed. Jerry, this is where my notes went off the rails.
Okay. I was going to say there's no proof, but I mean,
you would be right.
The same thing as her obviously not existing, is there's no proof that she, now I didn't go so far as to say no proof that she existed.
Yeah, as not that this didn't happen. This is not a real person. So Before we get into the potential myth of the White Witch of Jamaica, we need to talk about some facts, including what Jamaica actually looked like in the 1700s, which is when this story would have started, if she's real, because the real history of the island during that time was really intense and also very complicated, just like this story of Annie. So Jamaica became an English colony in 1655 when the English captured the island from Spain. Didn't know you were getting history in this episode, did you? After that, the British Crown encouraged settlement. Investors, soldiers, merchants, younger sons of wealthy English families, they're all coming to the island because they're seeing this opportunity for money. Colonization, never heard of it. So
What?
the reason was very simple. Do you know what Jamaica had a lot of that they thought they could profit of?
Feels like the best trivia question ever. It's right on the, I feel like somewhere between like not coffee.
No, but you're closer.
Tea, some sort of bean.
You were closer with coffee.
Damn.
Sugar. Jamaica was rich
my God,
in sugar.
Of course. Sugar cane.
Yes.
Okay.
By the late 1600s and early 1700s, Jamaica had become one of the most profitable sugar-producing colonies in the entire British Empire. Yeah. So plantations spread across the island, and you can imagine how this sugar was being collected. These plantations were powered by enslaved labor, and in this way, an enormous wealth flowed back to Britain. So owning a plantation in Jamaica could make you crazy rich, and it kept Britain very happy. So by the mid-1700s, Jamaica was often described as the wealthiest colony in the British Empire. Sugar was sometimes referred to as white gold, and the profits from the Caribbean plantations helped fund banks, estates, and political support in Britain. Yeah. Yes. By the 1740s, there were English planters and British men like Henry Fanning, who we're going to talk about, living in Jamaica. But it wasn't exactly a brand new migration wave at that point. The planter class had already been established for decades at this point. So with this in mind, it might be surprising that the white population on the island was actually relatively small compared to the total population. In the mid-1700s, enslaved Africans made up the overwhelming majority of people living in Jamaica, like 90%. While the white colonists only made up about 10%. Unsurprisingly, despite being a minority, the white planter class controlled the land, the government, and the entire plantation economy.
That's such an odd and like unfamiliar thing.
Yeah, surprising, right? Another interesting detail is that a lot of plantation owners didn't even live on the island full time, so many became what historians call absentee landlords.
Wow. Just one foreign concept after another.
Yes. Yeah. Like they owned massive estates in Jamaica, but they lived very comfortably in England. So they would leave an overseer or a plantation manager to run the plantations on their behalf. Okay. So even for the Englishmen who did move there, life in Jamaica could be incredibly dangerous. European settlers faced diseases they had little resistance to, obviously, especially yellow fever and malaria. Mortality rates were actually so high at this time that Jamaica gained a reputation as one of the deadliest postings in the British Empire. Yeah, so people arrived hoping to build wealth, but most didn't survive very long.
I mean...
And there was another constant tension on the island, resistance and rebellion. Because, like I just said, enslaved Africans vastly outnumbered the white population. Colonial authorities lived in near constant fear of uprisings. And in fact, some of the most... I know. Some of the most successful resistance movements in the Caribbean happened in Jamaica, actually. So there were groups known as the Maroons, communities of formerly enslaved Africans who had escaped plantations, and they were forming independent settlements in the island's mountainous interior, and they fought long guerrilla wars against the British throughout this time, so the late 1600s and early 1700s. Wow. And it was successful enough that eventually the British government was like, okay, like, let's figure something out here. So they signed treaties with those groups in 1739 and 1740, recognizing their autonomy in exchange for peace.
I mean...
Claps there. Yeah, I mean, they were like, okay, we get it. Please stop killing us, basically. Which, again, the irony we won't get into. But so when we talk about Jamaica in the 1700s, the world in which stories like the White Witch of Rose Hall supposedly existed in, we're really talking about a plantation society built on sugar, colonial wealth, enslaved labor, and a constant undercurrent of fear and conflict. I wanted to lay it out, not just because I kind of geeked out on something I didn't really know, but because I think understanding that reality sets the stage for the folklore that would surround a place like Rose Hall, because it feels a lot less like a simple ghost story and more of a reflection of the violence and the anxiety of the plantation world itself.
Absolutely.
And that's what folklore is. But it's not the direction I thought my notes would go in, because I thought, like I said, this is going to be a perfect example of someone with a literal alter ego. There's some faith practices coming into play here, and it just wasn't that simple. So people that I know for sure do exist include Henry Fanning. And Henry was an English planter, so he's one of these that has come over. He's made his way to Jamaica, and he's purchased about 290 acres of land in St. James, Jamaica, which is like the Montego Bay area.
Okay.
At that time, it cost him about £3,000, which is about £1 million today. This land establishes the foundation for what becomes Rose Hall Great House. And as construction is happening, he marries an Irish woman named Rosa Kelly. Okay. But before he can enjoy this progress, he passes away. Oh, so Rosa, I know, right? Like, what, you've put all this money into it, you found a wife, you're like, well, enjoy. Rosa goes on to marry a man named George Ashe, and he does finish construction around 1750. He was also a wealthy English planter and an architect. Because he was an architect, he had a lot of really specific wants for this home. So the design that he initiated included elaborate mahogany woodwork. There was a grand symmetrical staircase, and the structure built with cut stone on lower levels. Like this, it is a beautiful place, truly. Construction overall is estimated to have cost about £30,000, so about $11 million today, or 11 million pounds today. Keeping with the theme of ambiguity, it's a little unclear if Ashe died right after it was completed or just before, but either way, it was 1752. Following his death, our girl Rosa married Norwood Witter, so she's on husband number 3.
Yeah.
And later, John Palmer, who eventually completed the estate overall.
Okay.
So it's taken us 4 husbands to complete this estate.
That is so fun. How many husbands does it take to complete an estate in the mid 1700s?
And don't forget that that's just the white men involved in this project, because who even knows how many countless slaves did the actual work on this beautiful home.
And to carry your point home, they stayed dying. And at some point, it's like, okay, come on. Like, to what degree is it like, okay?
The land does not want you here.
It does not want you here. It's actively fighting against you, like an invasion,
invasive species.
Yes, why can I not say that? Invasive species, yes.
Unless the real twist all along is that Rosa herself was actually the Black Widow and she just kept killing them. That's not how this goes, but it would have been a good story.
I mean,
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know. But as far as women tied to this estate goes, even though the men were rotating, it was always Rosa. And so, of course, the Rose Hall is hers, right?
Yeah.
But Annie Palmer, our White Witch, doesn't appear in any of these early records tied to the construction of Rose Hall. And the woman most directly connected to the estate's origin is only Rosa Kelly.
Okay.
However, some historical references mention Rosa Kelly in connection with the property before the Palmers owned it because of the men that constructed it that she was a part of. So she is believed to have been associated with the landholding family tied to the estate before it even began development. And that's the name that you'll see if you're tracing early ownership of the property from the jump.
Okay.
So if you're actually researching all of this in a chronological sense, you'll see land grants and early ownership tied to Kelly and the early estate families. The Palmer family is connected with the building of the house itself, and then later Palmer heirs control the plantation. But none of those early records describe a woman named Annie Palmer running the estate in the 1700s, let alone existing there in general.
So she doesn't exist in any historical
She doesn't
context.
actually come up until 1929.
And how does she come up?
I'm so glad you asked, because it's a perfect segue into the next part of my notes. The character of Annie Palmer, the White Witch of Rose Hall, shows up way later in a novel written in 1929 called The White Witch of Rose Hall by Herbert G. DeLisser.
Okay.
DeLisser was a Jamaican journalist and novelist who based the story on local folklore that had circulated for decades, but he also dramatically embellished it. In his story, Annie Palmer was born in Haiti, learned voodoo from the children there, married the owner of Rose Hall, murdered multiple husbands, ruled the plantation brutally, abusing the slaves and killing them, and was eventually killed by a man that she enslaved personally. It's compelling. It would be a great movie.
Good. There's just all the parts of it
hits all the things.
Story you want.
But historians have struggled to find documentation supporting any of these events.
Okay.
Though, to be fair, he never claimed it was a nonfiction piece, right? It's a novel about a folklore telling. What likely happened historically is that, as we already stated, Rose Hall was a real plantation owned by the Palmer family. Again, it's beautiful. You should see it. Maybe don't go on a ghost tour. Plantation folklore about cruelty, ghosts, and hauntings were circulated locally because, obviously, as far as folklore goes, of course, those are the topics that their local folklore is going to include. And then Herbert DeLisser blended all of these things together into this fictional character and just created this composite legend rather than a clearly documented historical plantation mistress. But of course, we still have to take into account that the legend stuck enough that here I am in 2026 watching an episode of Ghost Brothers from like 2021 or something on the Travel Channel, where the people that work at the plantation are talking about Annie Palmer. And so, of course, I was like, well, how did that happen? So I have answers. Jamaica had this really strong tradition, and probably still does, of duppy stories, which is like their version of ghost stories.
Okay.
And plantation folklore specifically often created villain figures, which, it wouldn't be hard. You've got a lot to work with.
You just like walk around any corner.
That one, villain. Yes. So historians studying Caribbean folklore note that plantation stories often developed these mythic characters that represented the very real, very cruel reality of plantation life, which is certainly also much safer, I'm sure, if you're doing verbal storytelling of this sort of mythical character, as opposed to like Mr. John that literally owns us.
Yeah, it's like this safe reflective distance.
Yeah, no, we're just telling stories. That's not about you.
That makes so much sense. Of course. It's so that's what that's what storytelling is all about, is being the like catalyst to the emotional witnessing,
Right. Yeah. So Annie Palmer may function less as a literal person and more as kind of a larger symbolic villain of the plantation era in general.
Yeah.
And she became this figure that sort of absorbed a lot of different stories with the same themes of brutality, fear, and rebellion, which makes sense why she would have such a high body count, right? Like she's taking these men as lovers, she's murdering them, she's torturing them, and in these secret places in the home. And it's very much like we're edging right on something that makes total sense. These are very much things that were happening, but we're just sticking all of them with this one person because that's
Yes.
safe. And then an easy way too to retell it and pass it down in a folklore verbal sense. And of course, it doesn't hurt that the house itself is huge. And visually, if you take a huge house and say, also pretty haunted, some terrible things happen there.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Now when I look at it, I'm like, it is kind of eerie. It is like a creepy looking house. It's
Mm-hmm.
And then if you layer on the fact that tourism in the 20th century was really leaning into this haunting, haunted, creepy narrative, boom, you have everything that you need for, hey, do you want to take this tour? We'll tell you all about the white witch that used to live here. She was married to the owner, and nobody questions anything because why would you? It's a horrible story. Why would someone make it up?
I mean, in the most, like, to look at the thing, to look at it all like collectively, it's the only way that the brutality survives under this colonialistic
Mm-hmm.
authority over like it has to take this it's like the form that it would have it would the only form it would survive in.
Yeah, because to your point, don't forget that slaves weren't allowed to read and write. So
Right.
it's not like they could have, I mean, I'm sure that some of them probably did, but they weren't allowed to keep journals. And if they were able to
Mm-hmm.
write, they weren't allowed or supposed to, you know, keep track of like, well, today, here's this horrible thing that happened, and here's the
Yeah.
name of the person that did it, and here are all the details, right? But this way, to your point, you get to say, this is a very real thing that's happening in a way that you can continue to pass along. So, yes, 100%.
And if Annie never existed, then Annie wouldn't object.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the White Witch story that's part folklore, part literary invention, and largely tourism myth. Much shorter episode than we're used to
Mm-hmm.
doing, but largely just because turns out that's it, that's the thing. So also, I mean, I'm not trying to take any money from the tourism industry of Jamaica. Certainly get your bag, but generally speaking, it might just be wise to kind of remember that even if you are like me and you do believe in ghosts and the supernatural
Yes.
and all of that, it's still good to remember if something feels really exploitative
Yes.
or sensationalized, it's okay to go, I don't know that I love that,
Mm-hmm.
but I love spooky things, but I don't love that this horrible story is making someone a lot of money.
Yeah, the whole time that you're referencing it, I'm like, I would feel, I mean, I have, I feel like that just feels wrong. Like icky, wrong. It
Icky,
feels like,
yeah.
very voyeuristic, very, there's so many different ways that it feels like I can break this down. And I feel a deep weight considering that, like, okay, this is the only way that this level of violence and brutality was able to verbally be expressed. And then even that gets exploited.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then even that gets exploited. And it's like, God, there's no bottom of the well of just absolute volatility.
Well, and I think sort of inadvertently, what I'm doing is opening the door into like, uh-oh, is all of the supernatural tourism industry really ethically gross? Because if you look at it, it's all usually violence
Yeah.
that likely was real and documented. And so, you know, for instance, if it's like, oh yeah, this was the first female serial killer, and so she killed this man and this man and this man, and this is where she did it, and this is the jail she was in, and ooh, isn't it great? Let's take pictures. And it's like, okay, but if we take a step back, what we're doing is oohing and awing
Mm-hmm.
over we're over a crime scene.
Yeah. I mean, what a good episode to have because this is the conversations we were having. This is what led us to be like, hey, let's do this different.
ethical implications of the
Let's
things that we
not
like?
do true.
Question mark.
Yeah, let's not do true. That's why I stopped listening to so much stuff, is because I was like, this is fucked up. Like, this is not right. This is taking a turn in a direction that I was not, yeah,
Yeah.
a fan of.
Well, and I think this one especially
Hmm.
made me made me really sit for a minute and go, this doesn't feel good. Let's sit in that because
Hmm.
I think it's one thing to go, oh yeah, this place has a really dark story and alleged like, okay, any of the myriad of axe murder houses in the country, right?
Hmm.
All that happened a very long time ago, and that just timeline distance can make it feel very easy to go, oh wow, ooh, it happened in here. It's so creepy, right? But
Hmm.
it feels almost like another life. I don't have to
Yeah.
think about those as real people because at this point
Yeah.
they're characters to me.
Hmm.
But I think when you are looking at something like Annie Palmer and the idea that the victims that we're talking about are enslaved people,
Yeah.
and I'm not, it's a tricky conversation to navigate because I'm not saying, oh, that's a better victim than
Hmm.
like a than like a patricide,
Hmm.
right, that took
Hmm.
place or something, because this is family. And so, like, whatever, it was a bunch of white people killing each other. I'm not, has nothing to do with that. It's just
Hmm.
that I think somehow, somehow it does feel worse to me.
Hmm.
In that
It's different. It's apples to oranges in a way.
I think mostly because of the fact that in this specific instance, it's also not real.
Yeah.
Because then what you really are doing is going, oh, yes, you can pay for a ghost tour where we talk about the fictional, but we're not selling it that way, abuse of slaves, when you could take any real history tour and talk about the
Exactly.
very real
Yes.
documented am I making sense?
You
I'm worried
absolutely
about how I'm
are.
coming
No,
across.
you absolutely are, and I'm so glad that this is something that we're talking about, because what we're exploring is how it's like the closest words I have to it are dehumanizing, adjacent. We're removing the humanness, and it is replaced with voyeurism and
We're just lumping it into slaves as opposed to all these other crimes that we have where we go on these tours where it's like, here's a specific name, date of birth, here's what they did for a living, here's everything
right,
you need to know about them.
right.
And so by default, I think it is dehumanizing because we take away any actual identity by just labeling, which is already problematic. And so I think any sort of ghost tour about like slave killing, negative.
Yeah.
But then when it's also like, and listen, we can't validate that this person ever existed, but pay us.
And it's so I'm having so many conflicting feelings, and it's I love having nuanced conversation, because it really, in one minute I'll be like leaning one way, and in another minute I'll be like leaning another, and it's like, okay, and if this is one of the only ways that, due to further colonization, locals can have a better income, because they recognize that it's bringing in more money, because the
Yeah.
white people like to come here about. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And that's why I was like, I'm not trying to come for their bag.
No, honestly, at that, and then if I look at it from that angle, right, I'm like, fucking take their money.
I know.
Take their money. And then I'm like, wait, hold on. But you're
Because then it's
explaining.
like trauma tourism, like dark
Right.
tourism.
Right. And then it's like, oh my God. And really what it all goes back to is survival to some degree, oppression. There's levels, there's so many different levels of like resistance and perversion. There's so many different layers in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, no surprise here. It's, there's many different ways that the outcomes of colonization, genocide, they manifest in different ways. And depending on what access Native people then have, or non-Native people that are forced to be there, what access do they have? What right? Like, this is making me think about the folklore conversation we had around you can take a group and a culture and so like specific types of sociologists or people who study culture in general.
Mhm.
I don't even know the right word. My ignorance is, showing of then they can tell you like what kind of god that specific culture has.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
I think about this a lot with any kind of southern god. That's what it's making me think about too, is the way that like depending on the group or the culture, that's what manifests out of survival.
Well, and I think something else that's coming up for me is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about plantations,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking about how in the past decade we've seen what I, for the sake of this conversation, might call plantation cancellation,
Yeah.
right? Where we're like, we don't love your plantation anymore. Beautiful
Mm-hmm.
property, don't love it.
However, getting married, there is a problem.
Yes, here's something that I'm noticing is,
Mm-hmm.
but if you give a plantation a ghost, you can still function and have your tours and have your tourism. Myrtle's plantation, Magnolia's plantation, the Rose Hall plantation, you give them a ghost and it's like, and so let's talk about it. Because under the guise of a ghost story, we can comfortably have a conversation about all the evil that occurred here. As
Whoa.
opposed to, hey, would you like to take a tour of this plantation and we can talk about the really terrible things that
The
happened here?
brutality that was.
Right. And instead it's like, yes, and the slave quarters are haunted and you can hear their cries at night. We don't have to hear their cries at night. We can just go, hey, there are slave quarters here. Full stop.
Mhm.
That's a problem. That's
But that's
dark.
going to make people uncomfortable.
Right. And
They're not
it's
going to
like,
pay
we
to
don't want to
come.
do that. We
Yeah.
don't want to just sit here and go, and isn't that a dark part of history? But if we stand here and go, and isn't this a spooky ghost?
I would love to have a little to further explore this, and that my therapist brain is like, I can feel the difference between when I am working with or talking to a therapist or a practitioner or someone in like the health field or mental health field, and they don't agree with the same things that I agree with in the sense that they're really, okay with exploiting their employees or,
Right.
like very like more capitalistic mindset. And this, I have that siphoned out in a certain way, and I would love to do that same exact thing with exactly what you're talking about, that with this spirituality, ghost belief, and sensationalized. How do you feel through, and what are those little flags that make you go, this feels really problematic?
Yeah,
Like
like an approachable way to talk about uncomfortable things. I went when I was in New Orleans to the Museum
I've
of
been thinking
Death.
about New Orleans this entire time.
Well, I went probably because Madame
Laurel.
Lalore, yeah, it
Mhm.
makes me think of her.
Me too.
But I went to the Museum of Death and I walked in, and if you're not familiar, it is what it sounds like. There's a lot of serial killer memorabilia, a lot of crime
Hmm.
memorabilia, and when I'm saying that, I mean like items that the serial killers owned, crime scene photos, maybe a shirt that was actually from a victim that still got bloodstains on it, like that.
Mm.
It's that. And I went in and I said to the guy that owned it, he was the manager, I think, and I said, I heard that the other one, because I think the other one's in LA.
It
I said, I
is, yeah.
heard that the other one has a bloody shirt from Columbine. And he looked like I had just slapped him in the face. And he was like, I would never.
I'm super confused.
Industry.
Right.
Uh-huh. What that said to me in that moment was if a
Uh-huh.
crime occurs to an adult or an elderly person, they don't matter.
Free
If a crime
range.
occurs to a child, that is off limits and that's disgusting. I would never exploit that.
I'll exploit
That's
this
not how
other
this
stuff.
works.
These other people, these other things. Yeah.
Yeah, look at this picture of Ted Bundy's car and how he fitted it so that they couldn't get out of the doors. But a t-shirt's a no-no. And it's like, um,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, some of the women that he killed and beheaded and did terrible things to their actual heads, they were like 20.
Right.
So again, this might just be me talking to you, and I might
Right.
have veered from where we started, but it's this idea of like the line is very, very thin when it comes to ethics, because it is this thing of like, hey, if this is making you money and if this is good for your industry and your area and everything else, go for it. But at what point do we say, but you can't go that far for it?
Well, I think it too makes such a, like, reparations, right? I think it makes such a big difference if the individuals who are getting financial benefit from it are those who have been impacted,
Impacted.
affected. Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest differentiators, is that it's like, okay, but where is this money going? Who is it going
Mm.
to? Is this like a, like how some museums, right? Like they'll do that, the proceeds go to this specific group or this
Yeah.
certain thing. And that I would do all day long. But if it is a private, like if you're gaining fine if you're getting if you are financially gaining from
If you're
other
just profiting off
people's,
of
yeah,
this.
yes, if you are profiting off of other people's suffering, you are exploiting them.
Hmm.
And if, especially if then you start getting into race, if you start getting into socioeconomic status, if you start getting into uh, marginalized groups, like where do you exist within the system, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that some people are listening and they're like, it's not that serious. It's just a ghost story. It's just a ghost tour. And you are so completely welcome to have that opinion. I just walked away from this feeling a little differently
Mm-hmm.
and a little confused about kind of where I sit, especially because what it seems like is that his estate, the white owner's estate, still owns the like trust and everything. And so I did not look up any documentation as far as where money goes. So I'm not saying anything, but I'm just assuming that while yes, it does feed that local area, right? Money is inevitably going to go back because people are staying there, people are visiting there.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, yeah. So
It
I
ain't looking to.
I don't love it. The real white witch was the owner of the tour all along.
Well,
Oh
this was
man.
great. What a challenge. I mean, there's just so many more things that I'm thinking and that I could kind of play around with. It just really, I think it brings up an incredibly important conversation. We're talking about many different things here
Yeah,
all at the same time.
100%.
I was even thinking about how, certain aspects of being interested in things that you don't understand, or fixation on, or a fascination with things that are, I'm going to say, morbid, graphic, violent. As a woman, there's a reason why so many women listen to and watch true crime. And this feels like up in that alley.
Hmm.
And it's
In
important
the
to
Venn
also have,
diagram, we're somewhere in there.
and so that also, for another time, a conversation to have around where exploitation lies. It's just a really important conversation to have, I think. And so I really appreciate you bringing it to us.
Yeah, well, thanks for going on that journey with me because, like I said, I just wanted to tell you a story about a real horrible person. And then it was like, uh-oh, we're going to have to talk about different things. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I don't know, just brought up some stuff and some things and whatever. But yeah, that's the story and the end.
I know when I listen to other people talk about very nuanced and complex things, I have so many thoughts and things that I want to say. So welcoming that into the having a conversation versus like it being like oh, listen to this thing we have today, like open to other people's thoughts, obviously, and what they were
Open
thinking
to
while they're listening.
kind
Yes.
input and nuanced feelings. Yes,
And
nobody yell at me.
curiosity. Yes, curiosity. We love and welcome curiosity. So cool. Well, thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.